Welcome to Law Excellence Hindu News Analysis. Today we are going to cover these topics that are appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Now coming to the first article of the day. Now this article is saying that Union Cabinet gives approval for bills on simultaneous polls. Now what is the context of the news? You know that from the last 2 to 3 years there is increasing buzz around the simultaneous elections, right? Recently a high-level committee was also established or constituted based on the chairmanship of Ramnath Kovind. Okay, now this committee submitted the report and union government accepted the recommendations. Now, in the context of this thing, Union Cabinet recently approved a bill to introduce a bill in the parliament regarding simultaneous elections. Okay, now this article is very much relevant from the mains examination, especially because in previous year PYQ, this was asked in 2024 mains itself. Okay, this question is saying that examine the need for electoral reforms as suggested by the various committees with particular reference to the one nation, one election principle. Answer in 150 words. Now, in this context, we will discuss some of the pros and cons of the simultaneous elections in India. Okay. Now, in this article, it is mentioned that leaders like Mamata Banerjee and CM Stalin of Tamil Nadu criticized this. This is anti-federalism. This is against the principle of federalism. This is against the principle of representative governments. This is against the principle of parliamentary form of government because it leads to unitary nature of Indian polity. Now, these are the criticisms given by the various leaders. Okay. Now, from the examination perspective, we will understand what is meant by simultaneous elections, what are the advantages of it, and what are the disadvantages of it. Okay. Now, simultaneous elections means that conducting simultaneously the state assembly elections and also the central Lok Sabha elections. Okay. It doesn't mean that conducting elections in the Lok Sabha like in a single day. Rather, it means conducting elections in a single shift. That is, it may be over 2 or 3 phases, but at a time. Okay. So that it prevents the frequent disruption of the public life. For example, first and foremost advantage is seamless governance. Now, what does it mean? Now, you know that as a part of governance process, we used to provide a lot of public services, right? Everyone has their own daily life businesses, professions and all those things. But due to the enactment of the model code of conduct during the election time, this disrupt the public life, and some certain public services are also not allowed, and government is not allowed to provide certain welfare schemes and things like that during this time, right? Hence, this disrupts the daily life. Next important thing is it disrupts the development process also because of the frequent regime change and all. This lead to political instability, right? This reduces the or attraction or appeal of the investment destinations of the states, etc. Right? Because investors need a political stability also. Next, policy paralysis. Now, what does it mean? See, for example, it has been seen that continuously because of the change in regimes and change in political parties in the government. Now, it has been observed that as a convention or whatever it is, or a retaliation, certain policies are rejected by the opposite government. For example, party A come to the power, it has taken up one of the policy. Next, when party B came to the power, it rejecting the policy of party A. Hence, this lead to policy paralysis, right? And it can be in any form. Next, financial burden, right? Frequent elections, in multiple times, it leads to financial burden, especially to the state exchequer. It leads to a lot of money which can be used for the welfare and development and things like that. What does it mean? For example, let's say a constitution called A. Now, for example, it has been said that let's say Lok Sabha elections are conducted in, let's say in March. Let's say I'm saying example. Now, again, if they want to conduct a state legislative assembly in after 2 or 3 months, let's say June or things like that. Now, they have to again arrange the things dual times. Okay, rather than that, they can use single time resources like human resources and things like that at a time. So it can save the money also. Next, issue of identity politics. Now you have seen that people are garnering votes or vote banks based on the social identity such as caste, religion, and other populistic schemes and things like that. Okay. Now because of the frequent elections and all those things, politicians are mostly focusing on the garnering votes. Hence, they are forgetting about the policies. Now it has been said that there is a one quote, especially recent Prime Minister highlighted that before elections you can do politics, but post elections you have to focus on the policies. Now, because of the frequent elections, what happened? There is more focus on the politics, not policies, right? Hence, there are a lot of social divisions are happening because people are dividing, at the vote bank in terms of their identities such as caste and things like that. Okay. Next, voter fatigue. Now, you may have heard that the voter participation is very less in our elections, right? Especially if you see in the cities, it has been said that the voter participation is around only 50%. Now, if there is frequent elections, they cannot always move because there are migrants also. There are people with different professions, settled in urban areas. If there is elections, they may have voter ID at villages. They cannot frequently move. They will skip that. Hence, it's reduce the participation of the people in the elections and things like that. Okay, these are the things. There are advantages. Okay, there are certain disadvantages, especially these are raised by the opposition and things like that. We'll discuss what are the disadvantages. Now, what can be the disadvantages of one nation and one elections? Okay. Now, first and foremost thing is that overshadowing the regional issues. Now, you know that India is a diverse country. Now, every region has their own issues. And not only that, within the region, there are multiple, diversities or diverse identities such as caste, religion, ethnicity, tribals, and things like that. Now, when there is one nation, one election, the argument is that, people look after the leaders at the national level. For example, if any national leader, done good for something regarding the India at the international level or foreign policy level. For example, recently, about there's surgical strike. Everyone is talking about surgical strike during the elections of, previous election of 2019 and things like that. This garnered the votes for the then government. Now, this is one of the issues. Now, people voted with that thing, right? Overshadowing the regional issues and things like that. Okay. This is what the argument. Now, another important argument is that impact on regional parties. Now, that India is a multi-party democratic system. Now, this multi-party is especially emerged due to the regional parties. Okay. Now, what happened when there is, one nation, one election? It is being said that there is an influence of double engine sarkar. Now, you may have heard about double engine sarkar often in the news, right? That means when there is a similar parties at the central state level, there is sense of strength in terms of governance. That is what the argument, right? That one of the parties' argument. Now, on the guise of which, people tries to, or it will influence the people's, perception, things like that. Because lack of awareness, people think that it is the money that is entirely coming from the central government. Now, whatever the party that is there in the central government, it will impact the in the state level. Now, this is what the perception, okay, because of lack of awareness. Now, this can also happen. Now, political accountability. Now, because of the frequent elections are happening, there is a political accountability. For example, if any day done anything wrong or any party is not, complied to the promises or things like that, political accountability can be maintained by frequent elections. But because of the one nation, one election, it will take about 5 years of time to ensure their accountability. Now, this is one of the argument. Another is concern of federalism, right? Now, already it is being said that in India, the power is inclined to the unitary level to maintain the national integrity. Now with this one nation, one election, this affects the principle of federalism because even the bill that is simultaneous elections does not need ratification of the states. Hence, the say of states is reduced in this. Okay, the power of the state government is also reduced. Now, this is again is the principle of federalism and representative form of the government. That is what also argument given by the CM of Tamil Nadu, Stalin. Right. Another important is the logistical issues. Right. It requires significant resources, including vast supply of electronic voting machines, trained personnel, bureaucrats and all things to oversee the process. Right. Hence, it requires a lot of logistics, and these are the disadvantages. Okay. Now, what can be you can say in the conclusion? Now, there is a quote, said by the one of the former chief election commissioner. He said that this is said by the S.Y. Qureshi. He said elections have become the root cause of corruption in the country because after winning elections, most of the politicians having nexus with the bureaucrats to recover the investment what they have done. This is where corruption begins. Now, this is what he said that. And there is another important thing, as I said before, also in this, there can be politics before elections, but they should be focused on the policies after elections. Okay, this is what the things you have to remember from the examination perspective. Okay, now we'll move to the next article. Now, what this article is saying? This article is saying that Pakistan at the United Nations Security Council, the points of its compass. Now, what happened and what is the context? Now, recently, Pakistan entered into the UNSC non-permanent members. Now, for a 2 years term. Now, you know that in the last year, that is 2021 and 2022, India also completed its term of UNSC non-permanent membership. Right now, this is the 8th term for the Pakistan. This UNSC non-permanent membership, and India completed its 8th term in 2021 and 2022. Now, the author is saying that what is for India in this context, because while being the non-permanent member, it has certain advantage that it can start taking resolutions or initiating resolutions in the General Assembly or United Nations Security Council, things like that. Okay. Now, this author is saying that this membership, especially in the present context, is very important. Why? Because you know that at United Nations Security Council there are 15 members. 10 are non-permanent members, 5 are the permanent members. You know that for permanent 5 members. These 10 members used to change every year because every year United Nations General Assembly conduct elections to the 5 non-permanent members. Right? In this year, Pakistan is one of the 5 members. Okay. Now, who are the other ones joined? It is Denmark, Greece, Panama, and Somalia are the other 5 that joined as a non-permanent members. Okay. Now, this article is saying that this year is special because the half of the 10 non-permanent members are from the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Now, in this context, it has more clout. Now, this is what the author is saying. The author is saying that what are the focus areas of the Pakistan. Now, the author is saying that Pakistan will naturally focus on the issue of Afghanistan because it wants to stitch its relations, especially diplomatic relations with Afghanistan, by using the hand of its Iran friend China. Now, this is what mentioned in this article because they want to repair its relations with the Taliban. Now, that is what mentioned in this article. Another important thing that Pakistan is going to be is that they want to ensure that there is a ceasefire in Gaza and for the Palestinian cause and maintain the stability in the region, especially in the West Asia. Right. Another important thing is peacekeeping. Now, yes, like India, Pakistan is also one of the major troop contributor for the UN peacekeeping missions. Okay, and this is what one of its focus. Now, another important focus that is very interesting is that combating terrorism. The Pakistan said this because they want to mainly absolve or remove the tag of terrorist state. Now, in this context, it is said that it's one of the goal is that combating terrorism. Right. These are its main priorities. Now, what India can expect on this issue? Now, that is also mentioned in this article. Now, the author is saying that India can expect that there are many anti-India initiatives because with the support of China being one of the permanent member, right? Now, another thing is that anti-India initiatives. What does it mean? See, recently it tried to categorize certain people of Indians as a terrorist, especially belong to the Hindu religious organizations, right? This is one of the activism or one of the activity to divert its attention from calling Pakistan as a terrorist state. Another important thing is Kashmir issue. Though Kashmir issue is mainly seen as a bilateral issue, no, it wants to raise at the global forum and to get the positive opinion regarding that. Now, this is one of the things it often tries, especially in the context of abrogation of Article 370. Earlier, also it was tried multiple times by passing the resolutions in the UN Security Council with the help of China. No, it doesn't happen much regarding this, but okay. Now, next, using of Islamophobia. Now, because of this article is saying that because of the rising of right-wing parties coming into the power in majority of the countries across the globe, now it is being said that Islamophobia is rising. Now, what is only Islamophobia? Now, it is about hatred towards one community, especially the Islamic people. Right now, this Islamophobia is used as a justification for terrorist activities. Now they are saying that because of the Islamophobia to defend them, certain people are entering into terrorism. Right now, this is what the thing they use as a defense. Now, another important thing is Indus Water Treaty. Now, again, Indus Water Treaty is a bilateral issue. Now, again, they will raise this issue at the international level to solve certain things, especially regarding the projects that India is constructing in the Jammu and Kashmir around that region. I don't know. These are the things that India can expect. Now, the author is saying that there are certain common issues between Pakistan and India, in which Pakistan also set it as its priority. For example, combating climate change, right? Because Pakistan is also affected by the severe climate change or climate-induced floods and natural disasters. You may have seen the last year also that happened. Now, achieving sustainable development goals and debt burden of the global south. Now, Pakistan said this, it is one of the priorities, debt burden of the global south, right? Reforming multilateral institutions. Now, these are the priority areas that India also taken up, right? Hence, there is a convergence also. Now, because of the other saying that, but convergence have a little interest, especially in the context of the India's strained relation with Pakistan, that that. So, Pakistan's internal political changing and economic corals so misplace these priorities. Though the priorities are good, but effectively implementing it for strengthening the multilateralism is a far everything. That is what mentioned in this article. Okay. Now we'll move to the next article. Now this article is saying that missing spotlight on urban local government pools. Now what is the context of the news? You know that just now we have discussed about one nation, one election. The committee that submitted report, that is Ramnath Kovind committee, recommended simultaneous elections to the municipalities and urban local bodies also. Right now, it is said that in this committee report, it has been said that once completion of this, one nation and one election, after completion of within 100 days of simultaneous elections, there should be, elections conducting to these urban local bodies also. Now, that is what, said in the report. But what happened? The government set aside this recommendation, especially regarding the elections to the urban local bodies, that is simultaneous elections along with Lok Sabha polls, right? Because panchayats and urban local bodies are majorly comes around the state subject. Now they are saying that by state, as they are the state subjects, they require ratification from the states. And but as you know that states are not supporting it in one way, hence it need a lot of delay. Hence they are going with the simultaneous elections for the Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies, but not including the urban and local bodies. Now that is what mentioned in this article. This article is saying that state subjects are as a reason that is what said by the central government. Now this article is saying that a proper, well-governed cities are very important. For that, properly constituted urban local bodies is very important. Why? Because you know that 40% of the population presently living in the cities. Now this may reach 50% by 2050. Now this is as per the United Nations Population Fund data. Right? Presently, India has 4,800 urban local bodies. Now, well-governed cities are very important. Why in the countries? Because they are the economic engines. Why? Presently, 60% of the GDP of India is coming from the cities itself. Hence, a proper, sustainable, smart cities are very important. For that, decentralized governance is required. So why is simultaneous election particularly important? Because if there is no simultaneous election, what happens? As they are under the control of the state governments, there is a lot of delay in the elections conducted to the local bodies, right? Now in this article itself, it is being said that elections are delayed by years. Hence there is a lot of uncertainty in the governance at the local level, right? Now it is being said that 60% of the urban and local bodies are elections by the years. Now this is what mentioned in this article. You can use this as a data in GS paper 2. Right? Why? Because in GS paper 2, repeatedly questions are asking every year regarding the local body finances and what are the issues in the local governance, especially regarding the rural local bodies and urban local bodies and things like that. Okay. Now, another important reason for delay in elections is being said is the lack of empowerment of state election commission. Why? Because it is being said that the elections are, especially urban local bodies elections, are delayed because there is delay in the delimitation process. But delay in the delimitation process of ward committees, that ward committees in the cities, right? This ward committees delimitation is in the hands of state governments, but it is delayed. Why you are delaying this ward committees? It is being said that again the reason given is there is a delay in the issue of reservation. Now it is being said that that certain constituencies of at a local level, especially at the urban local bodies election, reservations are the that 1/3 of the reservation are for the women. 1/3 is for certain scheduled caste and scheduled tribes and things like that. Okay, and they are saying that people are appealing to the courts that this particular constituency, this particular ward is belong to the particular community and things like that. Hence, they are appealing to the courts, and this little lot of delay. Now, what the other is saying that because of this continuous delay, this delay in the local government polls, now panchayats and urban local bodies are administered by the state government. This is against the principle of decentralized governance, based on which the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments were taken up. This is against the principle of decentralized governance. Now, this is what they mentioned in this article. Now, the article is saying that a proper and timely local government elections are very much required to ensure that democracy is deep rooted, especially for a vibrant operational cities. Now, this is what mentioned in this article. Now, from the examination perspective, in GS paper 2, you can use this data such as 60% of the GDP from the cities, 40% of the population, 4,800 urban local bodies and things like that. Okay, and 60% of the urban local bodies are elections are delayed for various reasons. One of the main reasons is delay in the ward delimitation and reservations issues. Right? These are the things that are mentioned in this article. Okay, try to use this data in your answer so that your answer will be value added. Okay, now we will move to the next article. Now, what this article is saying? This article is saying that Comptroller and Auditor General of India CAG report flags violations and lapses in the enforcement of Tamil Nadu Coastal Regulation Zone notification. Now, in this context, we will discuss what is meant by the Coastal Regulation Zone from the examination perspective. Now, why this is important? First of all, we will see the context of the next, right? Now, this article is saying that in the CAG report, it highlighted that there are irregular coastal zone regulation zone clearances, illegal constructions, irrational devolution of responsibility that is given to the state level coastal regulation zone management authority. Now, it has been said that state level coastal regulation zone management authority, their responsibility of overlooking or monitoring the issues of construction and all these things, they devoluted to the district level authorities and local level authorities. Now, this is irrational. That is what saying in this article. And there are a lot of illegal constructions or beach houses are constructed, and a lot of coastal regulation zone clearances which are irregular that are given, especially in the eco-sensitive regions, nearby eco-sensitive regions, things like that. Okay, from the examination perspective, there are few things that are important for us to remember or to learn from the prelims and mains perspective. From the mains perspective, you have to know that coastal management is very important and recurring thing. Now, if you see this PYQ, this was asked in 2020. explain the causes and effects of coastal erosion in India. Okay, what are the available coastal management techniques for combating the hazard? Okay, this is what asked. Now, for other important thing mentioned in this article is eco-sensitive region. So, from the police perspective, you have to know that about eco-sensitive region, right? From which statute it was declared and things like that. We'll look after it. Okay. Now, eco-sensitive zones. Okay. Now, eco-sensitive zones are generally declared under the Statute Environmental Protection Act 1986. Remember this from the plains perspective. Now, this was declared by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Now, these are the eco-sensitive areas or ecologically vulnerable areas that are generally created around the national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves. Okay, that is around 10 kilometers beyond the national parks and things like that. Now, why it is declared? Because to minimize the impact of development activities, right? Another important thing can be like minimize the forest depletion and man-animal conflicts and things like that. They want to minimize the negative impact of the on the fragile ecosystems. Okay. Another important thing is these eco-sensitive regions also promote in situ conservation. Okay, we have to remember this 10 kilometer. And this in these eco-sensitive regions, you have to understand that not every activity is prohibited. There are certain activities which are prohibited. There are certain activities which are regulated, and others are permitted. Now, what can be permitted? Rainwater harvesting, organic farming, use of renewable energies, adoption of green technologies, and these are the things like that. Okay. Now, what are regulated? Like felling of trees, establishment of hotels and resorts, commercial use of natural water, erection of electrical cables, drastic change of agriculture systems. Now, these are things that are mentioned in the guidelines of the Minister of Environment. Okay, remember these things. Next, certain activities are prohibited. Remember these prohibition activities because these are very important. Such as commercial mining, sawmills, industrial activities causing pollution, air, water, soil pollution, or establishment of major hydroelectric projects or commercial use of wood, you know, and these things are prohibited. Okay. Now, remember these things from the examination perspective. We will also see certain things regarding the coastal regulation zone. Now, these coastal regulation zones are also important because this mainly to manage the coastal management, okay, coastal area management, and especially regarding biodiversity along the coast. You know that India has a very long coast, right? Protection of this coast is very important, especially from the ecological perspective because of the diversity in nature. You know about these oil-related, which are also part of the India's long coast, and mangroves. We have coral reefs and things like that. Okay, these have to be protected, and we are facing the issues of coastal erosion and things like that. Okay, and we have tribal or fishing communities which are living along these coastal areas for their livelihood. These areas are also be protected. Now, from the examination perspective, this notification is given by the Ministry of Environment under the Environment Protection Act 1986. Now, these zones are created as per the recommendation of Sailesh Nayak Committee. Okay. Now, under this notification, there are regions are classified into 4 regions. Okay. The first region is majorly constitute areas that are ecologically sensitive. Now, this includes mangroves, coral reefs, and areas that are breeding marine life. Okay. These are majorly heritage areas, genetic diverse areas. Okay. These are areas that are mainly between the low tide line and the high tide line. These are the areas. Okay. Majorly. Next, coastal regulation too. These are the areas majorly these are developed or close to the shoreline. Okay, majorly they are developed close to the shoreline. Now these are the CRZ2 areas. Now CRZ3 areas are also include some of the rural areas and some of the areas that can be developed or underdeveloped, but majorly not substantially built up. Okay. Now CRZ4. Now these are the areas majorly include Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Lakshadweep, small islands. Okay, except those areas that are designated under the CRZ 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now why this classification is just to regulate the activities that are happening. Okay, such as not to allow dumping of waste, not to allow construction and things like that, because that there are landslides are happening at the coastal areas, especially if you see the Kerala landslides happen. There are videos that have become viral. The standing houses are suddenly falling because of the landslides and things happen because that's happening because of the coastal erosions. So we need to prevent such activities. That is what the purpose. These are the things at least you have to remember from the examination perspective. Okay. Now we will move to the next article. Now this article is saying that Lok Sabha passes bill to amend the Disaster Management Act of 2005. Now this is the context of the news. Now in this article it is being said that this bill seeks to bring clarity and convergence among the stakeholders in the field of disaster management. Now, this bill was criticized by the opposition by saying that it led to a lot of centralization. Another important thing is that certain important, disasters such as climate change is not included in the notified disasters. Now, you have to know from the examination perspective what is meant by the notified disasters. Okay, and not only that, recently you may have heard that there is an appeal came from the Tamil Nadu government also to include heat waves as a notified disasters. But still, heat waves is not a notified disaster. Climate change is not a notified disaster. Okay, these are the things you have to know from the examination perspective. Certain things regarding the Disaster Management Act. Okay, certain basics. Now, before that, why this article is important? Now, if you see the previous year question, discuss the recent measures initiated in the disaster management by the government of India, departing from the earlier reactive approach. Now, these are asking that the measures taken by the government regarding the disaster management. Now, in this context, this bill also important because this is one of the initiative taken by the government to ensure that there is some reforms in the disaster management, especially bring clarity and convergence among the stakeholders for efficient disaster risk reduction. Okay, that is what mentioned in this article. Now, back to the basics. Now we will see from the examination perspective. Now you may have heard about the tsunami that India faced in 2004, right? After facing the devastating tsunami, India understood that there is a need of some frameworks to ensure coordination and cooperation between central and state agencies, and also we need certain authorities, certain positions who are responsible to ensure that there is proper activities of prevention, rescue operations, relief operations are conducted. Hence, to ensure that there are certain institutions and bodies created. Okay, from the examination perspective, remember it created National Disaster Management Authority. Remember, it was headed by the PM. So, if any institutions are headed by the Prime Minister, it's a very important from the examination perspective. Now, what is this for? This is responsible for formulating policies, plans, and guidelines for disaster management at the national level. Right. Similarly, at the state level, there are state disaster management authorities. Now, these are headed by the chief ministers. Okay, likewise, they are responsible for disaster management at the state level. Now, along with this, there are district disaster management authorities. Now, these are headed by the district magistrates who are responsible for implementing these disaster management plans. Okay, at district level. Okay, at the decentralized level. Okay. Next important thing is it also created National Disaster Response Force. You may have heard about that. You may have seen the people wearing jackets and all the time, right? They are a specialized force who are responsible for helping disaster times. They will give the quick response to the disasters, including search and rescue operations, providing medical aid and relief distribution and all these things, right? They are very much trained. And next, funding mechanisms. Yes, this act created two funding mechanisms such as SDRF and NDRF. Okay, there are provisions for creation to finance the relief and response operations. Okay. Next, this act also created National Institute of Disaster Management, for disaster related research, training, awareness and capacity building and things like that. Okay, now these are the things that are created. Now just try to know certain provisions from this bill also so that it can be useful, because we will discuss again. I think this bill will be repeated in the news in the after also, but let's say we will discuss something provisions from the news. Now, this bill added certain new functions to the existing mechanisms. For example, earlier Disaster Management Act, we have a function called reviewing of disaster management plans of the government departments. Okay, under the Disaster Management Act of 2005, government departments are responsible for the having disaster management plans for every department. Okay, now it is being saying that new functions are attached. Now, what are that? Taking periodic stock of disaster risk. That means what are the risks that are there. Now you have to assess the risk, know how much it can affect the people. Now, next, providing technical assistance to the authorities. Another thing is the recommending guidelines for the minimum standards of risk, because once you assess the risk, you know that what is the damage that can happen. Now, based on the damage, now you have to recommend certain standards of relief. Now, this also saying that this empowering the officers to maintain the certain level of databases for national and state level disasters. Now, these are the new provisions that are given. Certain other type of provisions that are added in this bill is that it empowers the National Disaster Management Authority to specify the number of officers that are required or category officers that are required to assist the National Disaster Management Authority. You know that NDMA prepare the plans, right? To implement the plans as per the act, it can create certain consultants and employees. Now, this further empowers the NDMA to specify the number of employees it required or category of services or employees it requires. Okay, this bill empowers the state governments also to constitute a separate urban disaster management authority, because these days urban disasters are increased. For example, urban cloudburst, urban flooding, these things are happening. So hence a proper management of disasters at the urban level is also very important, because urban areas are the economic engines, right? Next important thing is that you know that there is a National Crisis Management Committee, which is generally an executive committee. That is, you know that NDA may prepare the plans. These plans are executed by the, this National Crisis Management Committee. Now, earlier this is normally a committee, a high-level committee. Now, this bill is saying that we will give the statutory status to ensure that it have adequate powers to ensure grassroots level implementation. Now, these are the things that are said in this bill. There are criticism for this because though you have given that urban local bodies should implement the disaster management plans effectively, but there is no financial devolution. Now, this is one of the criticism. Another important criticism is centralization because excessive rule making power is given to the central government at the NDMA level. Now, but disasters are very localized in nature. That is what one of the criticism. Now, there is a test of constitutionality. Now, you know that disaster management as such is not mentioned in any of the list of the seventh schedule. Okay. Now, in this context, they are criticizing that it is anti-constitutional in nature because of centralization. Now, restricted definition of disaster. Now, you know that under Disaster Management Act, certain disasters are notified as the notified disasters. Now, presently notified disasters are 13 in nature. These 13 can include like floods, droughts, right, tsunamis, earthquakes, and all these things. Now, this article is criticizing that there are only 13 notified disasters, but you are not including the major, problem faced by the current society, that is climate change, heat waves. All these are not declared as notified disasters. No, these are the things that are mentioned in this article. Remember this points from the mains perspective. Okay. Now we will move to the next article. Now this article is saying that despite there is a high inflation, industrial output is increasing. Now this is an encouraging sign for the economy. Now this is what mentioned in this article. Now we will not go into the details of it because that is not important on the examination level. Now what is important is this. This is set by the index of industrial production. Now IIP is a very important, especially from the prelims perspective. Now, IAP is important because it is an indicator that measures the changes in the volume of production, especially regarding industrial products happening in India. Now, from the plains perspective, you have to remember why it is important. If you see, previously asked it is index of 8 core industries. Which one of the following is given the highest weightage? Here the answer is electricity. This is very old question. But index of 8 core industries is part of this IAP. Like index of industrial production. Okay. It is an indicator that indicates the health of the economy also, especially regarding manufacturing. Now, from the examination perspective, you have to know that who compiles and produces this, publish this index of industrial production. Now, this was done by the NS1, National Statistical Office, under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Okay, first thing, base year is 2011-12. Okay, it has broadly 3 sectors such as mining, manufacturing, and electricity. Now, there are use-based classification also, that is saying that basic goods, capital goods, and intermediate goods. Now, among the total weightage, 40% of the weightage is given to the 8 core industries. That's why this index of 8 core industries is actually given by the Office of Economic Advisor. Office of Economic Advisor under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Right? You have to remember at least these things from the examination perspective. Okay? What is the significance of this index of industrial production? Because it is used by the governments, private agencies, including the Ministry of Finance, RBI, also for policy making purposes. Okay, this is relevant from the calculation of quarterly and advancement of GDP estimates and things like that. Now, if you know that index of 8 core industries, remember as per this order, because this is decreasing order, right? Now this includes refinery products, electricity, steel, coal, crude oil, natural gas, cement, and fertilizers. Now, why these are called the core industries? Because growth in these industries creates a lot of employment, significantly affect the economy also, and also contributing to GDP also, right? Hence, it has a multiplier effect. Hence, that's why they are called core industries, right? Now, these things, remember in this order because this is a descending order, that is, big to small, okay? Because this was asked here itself. Now, order may change because of years may change, okay? Now, these are the things you have to remember from the prelims perspective, okay? Now, that's all for today. Thank you.